Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. The Engieering Tech Preview build finally released, and it looks pretty exciting. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you all so much for the support, it is truly appreciated. Also, don't forget, in celebration of CitizenCon, GameGlass have been doing a special 20% off discount for any lifetime pass until the 11th of November. And to get this deal, just follow the link in the description and make sure you use that code SMB2955 that I will show on screen here and in the description. And any sale made does directly support my channel with a direct kickback, helping to support my work. So a huge thank you to those of you who have done so. So, as I say, the Engieering Tech Preview build for the EVA Catty dropped around midnight last night, which by the time it dropped I had gone to bed, but upon waking up I could see that it was still available to download. So at the time of writing this, I tried to download it, it eventually got downloaded, I launched it a number of times. Most of the time I couldn't get past the loading screen, but I did manage to get about 30 to 40 minutes hands-on with the new engineering system after trying to load it for so long, and so far it is phenomenal. It is very buggy, which I will speak about a little bit in this video, but I would also like to put together a separate video talking deeper about my experience. Right now I'll just touch upon generally how it went and what I did and my overall thoughts at this time, but yeah, we'll go deeper. Also, do bear in mind that this test is under an NDA, in which I am free to talk about it, share the patch notes, talk about my experience, but I cannot show any footage or play any audio. That would be against the NDA. So you're not going to see any footage of what I did, but I will try to describe it as much as possible. So far, I have used a cutter and an intrepid. I have had fires, I have put out fires, I have had invisible fires, but it is looking really cool. For the cutter, you have a single diagnostic screen MFD on the cockpit, and this will tell you the state of each component, and you can toggle it on or off. You can go between damaged components, critical components, or failures, so you can sort of switch between which ones are in which state, so you can see exactly which ones need attention. Plus, when a component is damaged, you can hit this repair to fix it once, from what I sound like, and only once. But after so much damage, the MFD just turned off and wouldn't come back on again. I believe that is a bug, or maybe I needed to swap out the power plant, I don't know. I couldn't get my multi-tool to work. For the Intrepid, I loved the engineering terminal. It presents so much information and a hollow view of the ship, of its interior, and all the necessary info you'll need. You can toggle the relays, the doors, the components, temperatures and pressures. It'll tell you all that information. All of it very interactable as well, turning things on and off, opening doors, locking doors. You can also create your own presets, and in the case of the door locking shut, you can open them that way. So if you have someone on the bridge using, or in the engineering section, communicating with them where you can't maybe override a door, they can do that for you. So as I say, lots of bugs, but overall a great system that after fixing these bugs, tweaking things, I think it'll be a lot of fun for us to get used to. It felt pretty far along in terms of quality and visuals, and hopefully these bugs won't take long to get fixed. There will likely be a lot of balancing to do to make sure things act accurately, the room temperatures and things like venting ships and reintroducing the atmosphere. It all felt very intuitive just out of the gate, looking at the screens especially, but I can see that there is a lot more to learn. Coming away from it, there was so much that I didn't check that I never even thought about, but yet there was so much information that I consumed just from that 30 to 40 minute test. So a lot to learn, a deep system that I think a lot of people will really enjoy, especially if you want to get into engineering. Also, as a side note, helmets in this build can be, well, the one helmet I used, the basic one, can be physically removed. Your hands remove it. You can place it on your back. It wasn't clipping through. It looked a bit more accurate. You can also carry it under your arm, and it can also be inspected, where you can see the full helmet. It also dropped onto the floor, and it was physical. It rolled a little bit. I picked it up. It wasn't a box. It was a helmet. Still needs some polish to the animations for that, but that is cool, and hopefully coming in 4.4. Again, I'll speak a little deeper about that as well in a separate video. But this is one heck of a cool system. Now, we do have the patch notes to run through, plus a friend of mine managed to get in and start playing it quite a lot and has shared their experience with me, so I will be running through the patch notes first and then share their experience. It also appears that this tech preview build is on a version or a dev branch of the 4.4 build. It also has Vulkan on as default with all of the previous tech preview graphical options in there. So whether or not Vulkan is going to release with 4.4 or they're going to do more tech preview tests for it, I don't know, but it is interesting nonetheless. Now, firstly, testing focus is engineering gameplay systems, of course, power management, heat and life support systems, fire and relay mechanics, and component damage and repair. So quite the significant update with almost the entirety of the system. We're still not seeing the gravity system or the gravity component to be switched off, rendering us in 0G, but all in all, that is quite the meaty update for engineering. Now, for ships, it says power management of items via the engineering screens and MFDs, so you will be able to make adjustments and monitor the system, it seems, via both. For the engineering screens, it will show you room overview, so just some loose information about the room itself, like temperature and atmosphere, notification of failure for each component, power management, creating presets, which I do love, I'll speak about that a little bit more in the video, and component turn on and off control. For the diagnostic screens, it says overview of all components, one-time repair through button click for completely broken items, and this is to allow single-seaters a one-chance repair. So if you're in a single-seat fighter where you can't access the components or you'd have to EVA to do so, you will be able to click on each component individually and give it a chance of repair. I'm assuming it'll just repair itself rather than a chance of repairing, but maybe getting it going again so that you can then travel to get to a place to get it fixed properly, which is a nice addition and should really help those in single-seat ships to not just be immediately rendered dead and at least give a second chance. There's also critical state and health overview of all components on the diagnostic screens, and again on-off control for all components. Now, for the heat management, it says items that are powered will produce heat that needs countering via the coolers, which is the job of the coolers. Also, overheated components will shut off and need to cool down again, so giving a period of time for them to then cool off and come back online, which I assume will be displayed on your MFD, letting you know what is happening here. For life support, it says life support will manage breathable atmospheres and temperatures of your rooms, but this does not yet affect players' breathing. It is affected by fire, so oxygen levels will drop due to it feeding the fire, and then venting the ship will allow all the oxygen to be vented and thus putting out the fire. Not sure if it functions properly when you are inside your hangar or, planet side where there is oxygen. I'm assuming that doesn't work, but I haven't tested it. I don't think my friend tested that, so we are yet to see. Although he did say that when he climbed into the Aurora without a helmet, even though the doors were open, there was no oxygen inside. So there does sound like there's a bit of a bug there with how it re-oxygenates the room. That'll hopefully just get fixed for the next test. Now, for the fire system, it says fire can spread and can be triggered through overheating components or through damaging the components, so shooting them with a ballistic or energy weapon. You can put it out by using a fire extinguisher or, as stated, venting the room of oxygen. But it does say right now that temperature needs to be brought down to prevent reignition. And we kind of understood that from a previous demonstration and talk that they gave, where part of the job of the extinguisher is to cool down the location, and just because the fire might have gone out doesn't mean you should stop using the extinguisher. You need to bring the temperature of that surface down, or that point of contact down, so that a fire cannot happen again. And from what I've heard, there is a few bugs with fire, mostly with it potentially being invisible, where you see the temperature rising and even hear the fire, but you can't see it. So there's a few fixes needed to go there. That could be a Vulkan thing, I don't know. Now, for the relays, these connect items throughout the ship, and it also says that the relay function changed and is not in yet. Not sure exactly what that means, unless it's referring to this next bit where they say the goal here is to have relays fully interactable and allow for the full power throughput, meaning that if you lose relays, it will reduce the total power available in the ship. So maintaining them or having plenty of spares on board if they can't be fixed will be important to make sure that that power relay is continuous. It also says that relays are not the weak hard point anymore, where if you lose all fuses, you render that part of the ship dead. And I think what it's saying here is that if the power isn't going to a section of the ship, then that whole section will be essentially dead until power gets reintroduced. Rather than it just killing the whole ship, it is more systemic than that. I know that is what they said they wanted, but whether it's working like that is yet to be seen. And it was worded a bit confusingly. Now for ship damage, ship weapons will penetrate the hull of a ship and damage components below, and component death will result in components not being functional, but they can be repaired. Also, power plants can go into a critical state that will make the ship explode, which they say for this build they cannot be countered, but in the future you will be able to repair them or remove them and stop that from happening. But this is the kind of where ships will suffer irreparable damage, as a power plant exploding will be pretty catastrophic and will blow up the ship into, I suppose, what is classed as a full death. Also, regarding ship armor, it says that armor for ships did not make it into this build in time, but I think what it's referring to here is the faked stats for the impression of armor and penetration, not the full Maelstrom armor system that will come at a later date. I believe. I don't expect them to have Maelstrom physical armor with this engineering test. They did say that they would be faking this for the time being. Whether enough time has passed to roll out this physical damage system so armor can be present, I don't think so, but I don't know for certain, so I wouldn't want to say either way. Now, in relation to this, it also says that weapons have been balanced to account for penetration and new damage states. Now, I'm not sure what these new values are, but it will likely be a temporary adjustment until the physical damage system comes in, if it is not there yet. For ship components, it says they have done a full rebalance, and I think this is kind of like what we saw with quantum drives a while back, so it should be quite a substantial change with all component stats, their ratings like class, grade, and so forth, having much more impact on their ability, which of course will be very impactful when the new flight model comes along as well. Also, heat generation for each component is in, so pulling coolant from the coolers, which will eventually tie into the new signature and radar and scanner changes, as each component will give off their own signature, ultimately equating to the full signature that you would get from the ship when scanning. Plus, each component's health has been updated and their resistance to damage. And then finally, for FPS, the repair gun now repairs components and consumes RMC, so make sure you have RMC on hand, which the consumption rate has also been updated. And fire extinguishers will cool down and of course put out the fire, but also you can place them in the racks and they will recharge. Now, as mentioned, my friend did manage to get on and play quite a bit, and his experience is as follows. He says, while testing engineering on the Intrepid, he grenaded the engineering room and it caught fire, with the temperature of that fire getting up to 1500 Celsius. And he and a friend tried to put it out using 2 extinguishers, which he says wasn't enough. They did place it back in the charging station, but they couldn't get it to go out. And now that ship is just a kind of hollowed out, burned up ship in their hangar, like you would see with a fully destroyed ship, I guess, where the interior is completely gone. They said overall that the system felt pretty smooth, aside from the bugs and crashes, of course. Engineering UI needs some visibility tweaks, with some colours blending too much, which will be very important to distinguish between the different colours, as each colour will represent a different state for each component and item, so hopefully they can adjust that accordingly. Also, when power is shut down in a ship, the doors close and essentially lock until power is turned back on. There was an emergency override button for the Intrepid door, but that didn't work. However, you can shoot the door to get it open. So overall, it sounds like there is quite a lot of edge cases to resolve here, hence putting it into a tech preview for the Evocati only. But with seeing how much detail and change there is with this new system, I'm really excited to see more tests, or even a PTU at some point, to really open it up to the rest of the waves, highlight the problems, and just see how vast this system is. One thing for sure is that this is a deep, impactful change that will affect everyone in various ways depending on the size of ship you're using, with systemic failures, actual time to disable, no more faked soft deaths, but being able to repair your ship and get it moving again. Presets to switch to, where you can sort of set up all of your power management and relays for something like full power, eco mode, or whatever else you can think of. And the biggest benefit of this is that those presets can be shared between other players. So if there is someone in your org or someone you know who does really good presets, you can just take their preset and install it into your ship without having to think about it yourself. Also, proper fire that can be catastrophic if not handled properly, having to put it out with fire extinguishers. Penetration of weapons to give the impression of damage being taken in very specific locations, which will absolutely change dogfighting or combat as a whole. Full component stat updates, life support and oxygen, the venting of oxygen, and hopefully soon filling it back up again, and so much more. Now, this is such an impressive system that for bigger ships, having dedicated members to handle this stuff will be vital. For smaller ships, you will be able to get a kind of last chance to repair so that you can bug out and get it repaired or fixed up properly, or you might be needing to request help from an SRV. Relays being the throughput of power in which sections of ships can become completely disabled until power is provided again. So troubleshooting each issue based on the damage taken and the readout and information you're getting to get your ship flight capable again so that you can head back and get repaired more thoroughly. And my favourite bit really is just the screens, the diagnostic screens. All that information to let us know exactly what is going on and what needs to be done. So ideal to have a chief engineer to then delegate jobs to the assistant engineers who will be running around the ship, swapping out stuff, repairing stuff, putting out fires, just to keep your ship flying optimally. Plus doing a kind of diagnostics at the beginning of every trip, just to make sure that if there is an item or a component that could be degrading, having a spare available. Now, although I suspect we will see many more tests on Tech Preview, PTU, long before this system is ready to roll out to live, I am still hoping that early next year, within the first half at least of 2026, we could see this come along. Now, getting it in for Q1 would be amazing, but I personally feel that there is just so much that this system does and impacts, it is going to need a lot of testing and balancing before it goes live. Otherwise, we could all be screwed. If there is a bug that renders our ships inoperable, nobody's doing anything. Thank you to my friend for sharing their experience and letting me know how you found it. But that is it for this video. If you are buying anything from the Impound, consider using my link, and that will give you a discount plus provide my channel with a direct kickback. If you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Come and hang out over at twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother or here live on YouTube as well. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you'd like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you all so much for the support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.